Thanks for staying with us. And we are back with more Will Klusovsky. And we are talking about all kinds of strategies and implementations, especially with his perspective of security, cybersecurity business advisor, and the type of consultation that he brings to the table. We've had a great discussion so far about business road mapping, about content development, and the impact that it has both internally and externally. So, Will, let's jump into the next area. One of the things that you specialize in is getting go to market or GTM strategy. So, could you discuss a little bit about the critical components in an effective go to market strategy? Just tell us how it ensures successful product launch in this very competitive market.
For sure, yeah. It's we kind of hit on a couple of those bits, but it really comes down to understanding your client journey, right? What is that? Um, and that's not just their buying process, although that's a big part of it. But what causes them to be interested in you? At what point is what's going on in their lives or in their in their work world that makes them start to think, okay, I've got to look for this solution. How do you get in front of that and consult with them ahead of time so that you're positioned well as an advisor and not just a product to be bought at a certain time? And then that's where it branches off into a lot of the other things we talked about, which is how do you enable your sales team properly? How do you plan your launch or your upgrades or just your maintenance of your server, that whole services cycle of what you're delivering against. How do you time all of that properly? And then how do you speak about it? That's a huge part. We talked about content just a little while ago. How do you want to be represented and viewed as the world? How do you think about things in your perspective? Everybody has a line card from in services companies all the time, and if everybody just has a line card, then you all look the same, right? So what concepts, what key things do you really do to bring help to your client base, right? So that kind of putting all of that together strategically, and then how does that all work together with your client in mind first? That's really what the GTM is about for the most part.
I really like that. And again, I want to emphasize for the audience who will, you may not know this, is that I often want my audience to be watching with pen and paper in hand so they can jot down notes, they can take down the advice that or whatever comes up on the show. And I think what you said right off the bat was understanding your client's journey. Having, like you said at the closing, your client in mind when you do this, your go-to-market strategy should basically contain what you're going to do with, for, or through your client. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to say. And you mentioned product launch. Now, you're talking about product launch as starting a brand new business, or hey, here's a new product line in a current existing business, and the strategies may be similar but different. Could you tell us a little bit about that between startup and doing something new in an
For
existing product?
sure. Yeah, I mean, there's, obviously the idea of having a big product launch, like a brand new thing, it's the first time you're doing it. There's a lot more effort and investment put into that up front to say, okay, because you're going to start looking at things like, the competitive landscape. You're going to be looking at pricing models and cost structures and all of these different things that you're really going to have to really kind of the heart of how you're going to run your business based on you selling this product or selling these services. Once you've got things up and running, then you're looking at launch being a big new feature, a new service capability. You've already got your ideal client profile established. You've already got ideally a pipeline of customers that are asking for this. So in that case, your communication around this new thing that we're doing is going to be a little bit different versus the, hey, this is the first time you're hearing about us, come look at me part of it, right?
Gotcha. Very good points. I appreciate that. So, can you maybe give us an example of maybe a go-to-market strategy that led to some pretty significant competitive advantages? What lessons were learned from this implementation of that plan?
I'd say I worked through one where in cybersecurity, it's very common to go to an organization that delivers services. And again, like I said, you'll see the same things from every different company, right? They do a penetration test. They can help you with network security, with cloud security. We have identity and access management, all these kind of things that everybody does. And everybody's going to have, oh, here's our cool methodology, blah, blah, blah. But one of these organizations decided, well, we're going to switch this and we're going to change things to be, instead of just telling everybody we do all these things, here's some key things that we do, right? And that is we want you to think like the attacker, right? We want you to look at modernizing your operations. And what that did in that case is it makes your clients think, well, I'm not just here to buy a service or a product. I'm here to work with somebody who wants me to change my mindset or wants me to understand that, oh, this is really what I need to do. It's about partnering, right? And in consultative areas and in service areas, it's very hard to differentiate yourself. So by taking things and kind of going up a level to bigger, higher concepts, can often be successful. But again, and that was a very specific market. In that case, you're working with enterprise organizations where you need to look differently. In an SMB market, you may look at something to be more, I need to push a button and make this go away because I don't have time for it. But you want to do that in a manner that is, in my case, is going to still provide security. I'm going to help the business get rid of that kind of stuff. So I need to be able to communicate that I'm here to help and make things easy for you, not necessarily 10101010 down the line.
I like that a lot. So again, once again, you're flooding us with valuable information, and I really like what you're saying about mindset and methodology and how to differentiate yourself. So in my law enforcement career, did 12 years of law enforcement. One of the things I was very much in charge of was a lot of the training. So I had to think like the bad guy, and I also had to take my role playing actors or my role playing police officers. Now think like the bad guy and go fight your buddies or go create a scenario that they can react to. And it really opened them up to how they reacted in the real world and how they saw law enforcement in general. And so if you can partner up with somebody and change their mindset, you're saying that is one of the major differentiators. And again, you're using the word partnership. We know it's not going to be a legally formed partnership, but it's a relationship partnership that says we're going to work hand in hand with methodologies that may be familiar, but a mindset shift that is different than the rest of the industry.
Absolutely, yeah, you're dead on with the partnership thing. In a lot of organizations where you're especially selling, you don't just have one product, you've got services and you're consulting with them. The best way, the way you have to do that is through that partnering. In my case, chief security officers, CISOs, they don't want to talk to somebody who's just going to sell them a box once a year. They want to have somebody, like you said, that understands their environment and can say, hey, look, here's what we're seeing this quarter in the industry, what's going on. Hey, here are the things that we've seen you doing, and maybe you want to think about this, right? It's that being an advisor, being someone who can help them along the way, a Sherpa, so to speak, or just sometimes just a sounding board sometimes to be able to help them. And that's what that partnership's about. And from a business perspective, that's how you get your clients. I mean, that's how you get long-term sticky clients.
I love it. And I love the metaphor of being a Sherpa to the client. That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit here towards the end of our time about some retained advisory services. So that's something that you offer and you do with people. And I think a lot of people are stuck in the transactional mindset of just like, hey, I need a service, let me buy it. And it's an expense line on a financial instead of the relationship, instead of the retained advisory. So in what ways do you see retained advisory services like providing ongoing value to businesses?
Yeah, it kind of came about because, I would have lots of organizations reaching out to me and say, hey, I've got questions. I'd love to pick your brain kind of stuff. And I'm always happy to share knowledge and information. And then kind of realizing that, I've not that I've been there and done everything, but I've been around for a little bit. And, I always think I don't know much, but I come to find out when I talk to people who are new or maybe they're in a just different area. I've been a generalist in security my whole career, so I kind of know a whole little about a lot. Where other people, especially in the startup space, they're really smart about this one thing they've done. And so they'll come up and be like, okay, I've got this thing, but how do I sell it? Or where's my market? How do I get this into the channel? How do I find investment, right? All these different things that kind of I've been exposed to and kind of worked through. So it's really about just kind of having that person that you can reach out to and say, in lieu of some of the other things we talked about, saying, hey, I need a roadmap, Will. Maybe you just want to have me around, and I say me, because we're talking about, but I mean, there's a lot of advisory positions. You see this sometimes, and I sit on a few boards too from advisory board situations, but those are very different. That's kind of structured stuff. Being able to have someone you can pick up the phone and ask a question to because they haven't been in this situation before, or they're really in a position where we've got to do this thing, whatever it is with the business and make some change or have some impact, being able to give you that lifeline.
I like that. So go a little bit further on that, and specifically, the retained advisory versus advisory services can help in the big picture, but specific to the leader, the one on top, the one having to slap the table with those difficult decisions. How does that help them like you just said, pick up the phone. What process is there that these services can help them make that leadership the most effective, especially in those critical decision moments?
For me, kind of what we just talked about, any one of those that I take on, I consider a partnership. So most of those that I'm doing, I know the CEO and the leadership team very well. We're going to meet on a regular basis and have conversations. I have opinions about everything. I'm not shy to, or afraid to tell anybody about them. You don't have to just ask me for the opinion, So a lot of those times it is, okay, where are you, what are you doing in the channel right now? What are you doing for marketing right now? What, me just really kind of digging in and asking questions. And the more I learn, and then making them think differently sometimes. That's really what it comes down to. It's like, well, have you considered this? Have you thought about that? Maybe if you, do this, and a lot of times the other part of it too, which kind of comes with this, is introductions, right? Oh, I know somebody who can help with that. Maybe it's a person, or I know a company you can partner with, or I can provide an introduction to somebody else. And for my career, I've made a job of just like introducing people to each other.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
so now I've just kind of made that part of my offering too.
I love it. So to kind of summarize that, having the advantage of advisor in reverse order is one, it expands your network. So now you don't just know somebody, you know somebody that also knows somebody. And then being able to pick your brain and have somebody there in that critical moment, just that accountability is fantastic. So Will, we've come up to the end of our time, but I'm sure after hearing how much wisdom you have, people are going to want to get a hold of you. How do people find you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I'm highly active there. It's slash Will Clue. That's WILKLU, which is also my website, willclue.me. So there's only one L. That's kind of the neat thing, and it's a shortened version of my name. And I did just launch my podcast last week. So it's called Keyboard Samurai. You can find it on all the places: YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And that whole podcast is focused on helping people in cybersecurity business. So I have other CEOs, other security leaders, and we talk about their unique situations and the things they've seen, so that hopefully other people who are seeking to get some help can get a little bit of information and maybe even be entertained.
I love it. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a true pleasure. Everyone else, I want you to sit tight. We're going to be back with another guest, a familiar face, for more pivotal change right after this.